I'm Miss Galata and welcome back to Library Lessons. Today we're talking about genre. There are two main genres, fiction and nonfiction. Do you remember the definition of fiction? Right, it's writing that describes imaginary events and people. What about nonfiction? What does that mean? Great memory. It means writing that is based on facts, real people, real places, and real events. Now, there are many different types of fiction and nonfiction books, like... Wait a second. This actually sounds like a job for our esteemed friend, the genre gentleman. Mr. Gentleman?
Oh, why, thank you, Miss Galata. There are different types of fiction, and the ones we will be talking about today are realistic, fantasy, and fairy tale. Do you recognize these? Of course you do, you distinguished students. Some examples of these are Pinky and Rex, Harry Potter, Cinderella Penguin. Can you think of any more examples? Pause the video and discuss. Now, what makes these books fiction, you ask? It is because they are imaginary stories. Do you really think Harry Potter waved a wand around and had magical powers? One can hope, but alas, he did not. There was no real penguin who fit her flipper into a glass slipper, and though Pinky and Rex seem real and may find themselves in similar situations as yourself, they too are fictional. Let's see if we can keep these different types of fictional books straight. There's fantasy, which usually includes an element of magic. Realistic fiction is something that seems real, but is actually imaginary people, situations, and events. And fairy tales are old stories, passed down from different generations and cultures, like Cinderella or Stregonona. Now, to put your knowledge to the test, I'll show you a book, and you tell me if it's fantasy, realistic, or fairy tale. If you don't recognize the book, guess based on the title and cover. Fantasy. Fairy tale. Realistic. Realistic. Fairy tale. Fantasy. Now that you've aced the fiction section, we will move on to non-fiction. There are tons of different types, but we will focus on 3 today. Those are history, people, and nature. History is, well, history. Real things that happened in the past. These include books such as World War II, Fighting for Freedom, Titanic, and The Wild West. Many non-fiction books focus on people, from a biography of Louis Armstrong to the novel Hidden Figures about 3 real women. Other examples include Women in Sports, Chuck Norris, and the Who Was books. My favorite type of non-fiction books are anything about nature. This can include trees, animals, storms, really anything outdoors, and can even include places like the Grand Canyon or the Sahara Desert. National Geographic books are a good example of this, as well as Who Would Win and the Where Are What Is books. Are these making sense? What type of non-fiction is your favorite? Very sophisticated answers. Now, to test your non-fiction knowledge, I will show you a book, and you tell me if it is about history, people, or nature. History. nature, people, nature, history, people. Astounding! I have taught you superbly. Bravo, my students. There are many more genres and subgenres in the world, but the ones you need to focus on right now are fiction and non-fiction, and the categories that fall beneath those. If you begin there, you could find yourself anywhere in the reading world. Back to you, Ms. Scolata.
Thanks, Mr. Gentleman. You've been really helpful. Now, let's do an activity to make sure that you not only understand how to read nonfiction and fiction, but you can write it as well. First up, grab a pen or pencil and a piece of paper. Now let's write some fiction. I'll give you some words that you could decide whether or not to use, and you write me 3 sentences of a fiction story. Only 3 sentences. It can be just the beginning of a story. It doesn't need to have a middle and an end. Remember the 3 types of fiction we talked about: realistic fiction, fantasy, and fairy tale. Your words are wand, camp, and castle. Pause the video to write your sentences. Great, let's hear what you've created. Does anybody want to share? If so, go ahead and pause the video. Now for nonfiction. This one may seem a little bit trickier because it has to be based on real facts, but we all know a lot of facts. For example, like what your pet looks like, or what you did yesterday and how many games you played, or even how many planets there are in the solar system. You know a lot, but let's start a different story, also with 3 sentences. Remember, the categories are history, people, and nature. And your words are today, my favorite, and I went. Again, if you want to share, go ahead and pause the video. Amazing work, everyone. Knowing the different genres makes you even better readers and writers. Feel free to take your sentences home and keep working on the story. I'd love to read them when they're done, and I'm sure the genre gentleman would too. Right, Mr. Gentleman?
Oh, of course. I'm sure that they are superb.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Library Lessons. I'm Miss Scolata, and I'll see you next time.